All right, we're back for build number 2. So we're gonna do some of the running gear. We're gonna get everything set up for the arms, and then probably start soldering some stuff. So let's go ahead and get to it. All right, so first, I already did all this, but first you're gonna wanna go ahead and get your rollers and go ahead and install your bearings into them. Nice and loose. So it's all done on one of these, but then what you're gonna wanna do is get these are M3x20, and in the instructions it says to use the fine thread, which you can do that. I just didn't have any, and I mean, they roll just fine on these. These are the self-tapping. So anyways, go ahead and thread those into your outer track guide. I'd say about a little more than halfway. And then once you do that, go ahead and start to put your rollers on. Get all those on. All right, and then we're gonna wait for these for right now. So we'll get our filler in. I don't remember which way it goes. Looks good. Then we'll go ahead and get our sandwich our pieces in here. Put them the right way. Best way to check is this liner here. The center one can kind of move even after you're done doing what we're doing here, so don't worry too much about that. We'll grab our screw, and I would have preferred button head on these guys. They just look a lot better when it's all done. So go ahead and tighten these down. You don't want to tighten them down too much. If you tighten them down too much, this roller gets locked up, so go back just enough to where this roller starts to spin freely. Make sure this middle part isn't pushing down on them. A little more. There we go. And we'll just do that to every single one of these. What I'm doing as well is squeezing on this back part. I think I'm going to redo this one. So we'll go back, and then I'm going to squeeze right here and right here. Get them as close as I can. Alright. So that's what that'll look like first. Get this into position here. Get that all lined up. I mean, you're gonna have to readjust it here in a bit, but okay. So the big roller is gonna go towards this this mark here. So we'll go ahead and get that one in. We'll take our M3x20. Do the same thing. to take your rear roller, sink it, 3x20. Alright, we have our one side of the roller, so go ahead and do that for the other side as well, and then let's get them mounted. So to mount these, I got the longest ones I can find. I think these are 35. But these are self-tapping screws as well. In the instructions it says to use the some all thread, which, I mean, you could still do that. You're just gonna have to drill it. And that's how it was when I first designed it. That's how it was used. And I thought it would help clamp everything together, but once the cab and everything's together, it works. It doesn't need that. So what I'll do too is I'll get it to protrude just enough to poke into the frame here, and stab it in and push, and then start tightening it some more. Don't tighten it all the way. You want to go ahead and get this one started, get it all lined up and started, and then you can go ahead and start to tighten them down. And then wait until you start to see this guy move. It's going to probably move off of it because it's not lined up. There it is. And then what we'll do is we'll move it until it sinks in. It looks like it's about 2 mil from the top of that. We're going to do that for this other side. Okay, so now we have the rollers on. Feels good. We'll go ahead and get our drive gears on. Then these are actually 2-part. You can see the Phillips head screws, they're countersunk, so something similar to this. See that it's got the flathead. Those are, let me double check, those are going to be 4 M3 by 16 millimeter self-tapping screws. Seems a little long. Let me check that real quick. Yeah, so 16 millimeter flathead. And then up here you're going to need a M3 nut, and then an M3 by 10 millimeter fine thread. So I think it's 0.5 M3 by 0.5 millimeter thread, and again 10 millimeter. And then what you'll want to do is, let's see if I can Find it. Well, normally what you'd want to do is you'd want to find the mark where it wants to sit. So you may have to put the tracks on to find this, but you'd get it on there, and it might actually just have to go all the way, and that's what it looks like. But I could see my mark here. And then you'd grab a grinder and you'd actually grind just this little sliver down. So maybe about, well, let's see. So about 4 millimeter across here. Let me grab a Sharpie to show you. So something like this. You cut a flat spot in there. You don't have to go very deep, you just go maybe like 2 millimeter. And what that does is it allows that this screw to sit inside there, and it won't be able to move. But the way that these tracks are set up with these rollers, the track can't drift, so it should be sufficient. So I'm gonna go ahead and put those on, get that set up. All right, that looks good. And then we'll do it on this side as well. All right. Those feel pretty good. Yeah. Bearings are pretty good. All right. Let's go ahead and let's see. Let's get. Let's follow the instructions. Put the tracks on. Okay. All right. Fine. We'll put the tracks on. Just gonna put our tracks on, and then how I look at it is, doesn't really show in the instructions, but this H is kind of like, hopefully you guys can see that the way that it's moving upward, that goes towards the outside. But if you flip it over, it kind of goes down. So let's go this way. And I'll put it on the gear first. You're gonna be able to push it down the most there. And let's get it through this one. A lot harder to get it through both sides first. Alright, just like that. Get your track on. Nice, feels good. It'll probably loosen up a bit if you're using TPE anyways. You can hear that. This stuff is like a rubber band. Okay, so H going up and around. Actually, should be the other way, sorry. Up and towards the front. So like the hook should go up and around towards the front. So again, we'll go ahead and put it on here first, the gear. I'll probably have to bring it over a little bit. And then we'll bring it this way. Around here. I guess it's easier to do this one, put it on the gear. Oops, I missed it. You can see it looks like it's on there, but you can see in here, you can see some of those teeth. So you want to make sure those teeth, the outer teeth, are inside that gear, or that wheel, excuse me. There it is. All right, So we got the tracks done, so awesome. They feel good, nice and sturdy, nice and like band-like. All right, so next we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get the cab on here, get the cab built. So we've got there's a few different parts here. It wants us to do the arms right now, but we're not gonna do that as far as the instructions. Maybe we should do that. Fine. Let's do the arms next. Okay. So we're looking for something like this. And I'm going to take this one apart probably off camera just to make it quicker. But what you're going to do is you can add all your details here first if you want. Won't matter. You can do it all afterwards. But what we're going to do first is we're going to go ahead and run our wire through this channel here. And you can see the channel. And this is going to be the wire for the bucket motors. Alright. As I mentioned in the previous video, we're going to go ahead and change up the wire here. I'd just rather see some black wire than the other colored stuff. So here we're going to, hopefully you guys can see that. You don't have to go very long. I'd say maybe about 6 inches past this point here. And then back here you're going to probably want to go maybe about 10 inches. You don't need to do anything special with the ends right now. I don't know. This wire might be a little too thick for it. Maybe not. Let's see. So I'm laying it sideways. Alright, and then we're going to go ahead and get our arm. Stick it on right here first. You can see the point. And then what I'm doing here is I'm lining it up. I'm lining it up right here on this corner and then at that point where the wire is. So we'll do that and then that bottom. So slide it back a little bit. Right there. And just like that I'll apply some pressure. Push it in there. So let's go ahead and get our screws here. And these screws are going to be, let me see, I'm 3x12. And these are going to be self-tapping flatheads, so countersunk. So let me get this first one in. And I'll go pretty tight on it. And then what I'll do is I'll go to this back one here. Just so I don't have to push very hard anymore. Alright, and there's that. Yeah, this wire is a little thicker, so I won't be able to slide it through, but there's more than enough to do what we gotta do. So go ahead and finish up screwing your arm together, and then I'll actually end up speeding through this because I gotta take apart the other arm and do the same thing. So we'll see you here in a bit. All right, so we got our wire through on both arms. This is essentially what we're looking for. So let's go ahead and continue. Check this. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and get these on. This is the crossbar mount. So get them lined up, And then these are all going to be, it says in the instructions M3 by 8, but with the AliExpress arms, they're going to be M3 by 6. M3 by 6s. So let's go ahead and get those in. Okay, so then your crossbar here, that gets mounted with the same hardware, M3 by 6. And then you're gonna, the screw gets tightened into the into this sway bar, or not sway bar, but this bar. And you'll notice that the screw actually spins in there. So, and you want that to happen. We'll go ahead and do the same thing on this one, and then get that bar mounted. Alright, so let's go and get that bar mounted. So you want this, you'll notice that it's not completely flat. It has an extra buildup over here. You want that facing inward. So inward, what I mean by that is the where the screws are. This is the outside of the arm, this is the inside of the arm. So you want that build out to face towards the inside. So we'll go ahead and get that.
I'm gonna put a little pressure behind it. Or not.
And you don't want it to be too tight. Remember, you want to loosen it just enough to where it wants to swivel. So, and that's pretty good. That's what we want. Okay, got that done. Make sure you get your 3mm bearings in here. You're gonna get one on each. On one on the outside, one on the inside. Then we'll go ahead and continue with this. So we'll take our arm joints, go ahead and install your bearings into each of these as well. And then we'll go ahead and mount them. So you're going to slide that over here, line up those holes. This is going to be, you're going to use a fine thread, and it's going to be 28mm to 30mm. So anywhere in between that, it doesn't matter. 28 would be probably the best. Let's double check. 28. That's to be exact. 35 if you're going to use a nut. I don't use a nut in there. I just slide it in. I like these screws because the shoulder here is 3mm exactly. So once you kind of press it in there, it moves nicely. And you may need to sand or file the inside down here, depending on the tolerances of your printer. Usually when you print at 0.16, it's nice and snug. So go ahead and do that on both arms. Oh, also, make sure that you're putting it on the right arm. So this curve right here, this chamfer and this hole, this box, faces toward the outside of the arm. So this is right. So we'll grab this one. This is the outside. Got all that. Looks good. Beauty. Okay, let's go ahead and take our rear cross brace, And at this point, it'd probably be best to take your 3mm drill bit, and then you're going to drill through this and this hole here. You want this to be 3mm. You want this to be 2.5mm, because you're going to thread into this, into the cross brace. So with the cross brace, we're going with, it says, so with the cross brace, you could, in the instructions it says to use an M3 rod. So you pinch the arms together in a sense and keep them nice and straight. But I found that this way works just as well. So that's what we're gonna do. So get it enough to just protrude there. And then we'll grab this guy. Stick that on there. Just tighten it down. Alright, that's nice and locked down. So we're going to do the same thing with this arm. This doesn't seem as long. Let's see if I have a better screw. Okay, so what I did here is I grabbed some, let me just double check on what it is. It is, so these 30mm socket head self-tapping screws. And I put it on here. So when you're doing this, you want to, it doesn't really matter if these are closed, but close them all the way. Put it on something relatively straight. And then push down and then tighten this last one. There you go. You can see it's a little off actually. Yeah, it's a little crooked, so we'll go and straighten her out. I don't know if you guys can see that, but that looks pretty good. Excuse me. Okay, so then what we'll do is we'll grab our front cross brace. Go ahead and screw in your ladder rack with the M2 by 5mm self tappers. And then and what we're gonna do is these cutouts are gonna go towards the inside. So we'll go ahead and get this situated. Oh, I'm a fool. I'm a fool. I think. No. Sorry about that. Your screws are going to face outward. So these indents are going to face towards the front. And then here, we're using some self tappers, and I believe these are the 20s. Let me just double check again. And these are M2 by 20mm self tappers, and those go through this hole here. And then I don't know if you guys noticed, but there's going to be some cutouts, and you're going to make sure that the piece fits inside there. You may need to shave some off. And get one side nice and tight and snug, and those cutouts are going to really help keep that piece nice and straight. And then go ahead and look at the other side and make sure that it fits in there. And I'm fitting right inside that cutout. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave this upside down. And when I say that if you guys need to file anything down, what I'm talking about is I got these little hobby files, and essentially tiny little files. You probably can't see the ridges here, but they're perfect. And I mean perfect for filing things down and getting them nice and cleaned up. So really, really awesome for it. Let's get this last screw in here. Looks good. So now we have the arm assembled. Looks real nice. Everything looks pretty straight. So let's go ahead and get that mounted. Alright, so what we're going to do is fish these wires through. Oops. I'm going to go right through this hole here. I'm going to do the same thing on this other side. Get all tangled up. Put the battery right over there. Okay. So what we'll do first is let's go ahead and actually we got to get our actuators in here. So with these, it'll be a bit tricky. Go ahead and get your decals on there if you're printing them, and then your door here, and you're gonna glue that. I glued my decals on there as well. The glue, unfortunately, the lid is done. Just get a little dab of glue on here. Just a nice derp right in the middle of it. And then we'll go ahead and press that in there. See if we can get this lid back on. Not really. Alright. Okey-dokey. So let's go ahead and another thing to pay attention to is where this wire is. See where this wire is right in here, and you want it to stay on the inside of this arm part. So right here is good. You don't want it to be on the other side of this pin or anything. It'll get pinched. So let's go ahead and let's get our arm on. So first we're going to grab our M4 bolt, and this is going to be going through the bottom of this. You're going to go ahead and grab your little spacers, right? So you're going to go ahead and slide the M4 through here, and we're going to slide our actuator and then our spacer. Hopefully yours isn't falling apart like mine. Make sure you're on the inside of that. And then fish your wire through. you have any tweezers, they help when you're doing stuff like this. Alright. Let's go ahead and push this in place. And we'll go ahead and start screwing that in. Alright, so that's in there, and we're going to leave it just a little loose for right now. So I'll loosen it up just to where I can still move it somewhat. Alright, and we're going to push this wire towards this as we're getting this in here. Excuse me. And then you're going to go ahead and just sight this. You can kind of see through the hole, and that looks pretty good there. So let's go ahead and get our other M4. This is a little shorter than the arm one. The arm one is an M4 by M4 by 35, and then the upper one is an M4 by 25. So this one down here, M4 by 35, and I used a fine thread. If you could find self tappers, I mean that would work too, but fine threads always work for me. So grab your 25, your M4, excuse me, by 25. Oops. What am I thinking? Wrong hole. Yakisaki. M4 by 20 would have been a little more ideal here. So we'll go ahead and grab our M3 by 30 fine thread, of course. So that's the 0.2, or excuse me, 0.5. And that goes up in here on this upper hole here. We're gonna push. Hopefully we find the hole, hopefully it's straight back. Worst case scenario, we just gotta play with this arm a little bit. And we'll just have to side it. getting hard to see. Alright. I can see. That needs to go a little bit further back. Oh, took me a minute. Once you find that hole, it works out nicely. And what I usually do is I'll get it tight and then back off just maybe like a half a turn, quarter turn, and then to double check it, just make sure it moves like this. Hopefully you guys can see that. Yeah. Hopefully the light showed a bit of it. Alright. So it's doing this now because that link over here isn't tied in. So that link goes over here. Of course I put it on backwards like a dum-dum. So I have to unmount this and flip this link around. It's actually, I don't know if you guys can see that, but this is backwards. It gets mounted here, but so I'm gonna do that real quick. Okay, so after we get this this M4 in, M4 by 35, we're gonna go ahead and grab our M4 or M3 by 20, excuse me, 25 shoulder screw, and you're gonna put it in here, get this guy in here, so this, line it up with this hole, and go ahead and screw that in. And this is a fine thread. I used a fine thread because you want to add a lock nut back here as well. So once you do that, you'll have pretty much one side done, and then you're gonna go ahead and grab this guy, your sway bar, and then we're gonna, let's see, I assume it's this, which is going to be a flathead, and that is so it's an M3 by 10. And then tighten it all the way, and then bring it back out just a little bit. And there it is, there's the arm movement. So let's go ahead and get this actuator locked in. What you'll do is you'll look down this hole, and you can see right through it. See my finger. Just line up the actuator in that hole, and then go ahead and get this screw, which again is an M4 by 25. M4 by 20 would probably be better. Fine thread. And then we'll screw it in. There it is. Alright. Now we got nice and locked. So we still have one more hole. You guys are probably like, hey, don't leave that. And that's going to be another M3 by 30 countersunk. And this is a flathead. And that's going to just get screwed in. This is going to just be more support for this panel here and for this arm in general. You're going to probably have to line it up. I usually spin them backwards to get it nice and lined up. That one you can tighten down pretty good. feels nice and solid. All right, so lastly on this side is going to be an M2 by 5. You're going to go ahead and screw that panel. I was wrong. M2 by 8. And you're going to screw the panel into the frame. And that's that. You can see this is lined up pretty nicely. Everything looks good over here. So this side is complete as far as this arm. Make sure your wires are nice and unobstructed. And then you'll notice later on that you'll probably need a little bit more of this slack up in here because the arm is going to move up. So we'll make sure that we leave a little bit, and then we'll push them in there and fish them out over here. Again, this is where they go. Tweezers will come in handy. You can definitely pull it up a little bit, something like this. Again, just make sure that there's more than enough slack, and you can kind of tuck it back inside here. So we'll go ahead and do this other side, and then we'll move on to the rest. But I will probably do this part off camera because we just did that other side just to speed this video up. Trying to keep it relatively short, but detailed with the mouth. So, all right, we'll be right back. All right. Everything's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and grab our cab parts. So I'm gonna go ahead and screw all this together with some M2 by 10 millimeter, 8 millimeter self-tapping screws, and I use the socket head. Again, I love those. If you're going to add any lights through here, or your utility light, you're going to have to cut the utility light or the beacon light and solder your pieces back in after you fish it through. The door, just follow the instructions for all that. Everything should go right in. Your window template, and then you should have the holes in the window template for all your goodies here. And then this, this is really thin plastic from, when you buy a toy, the box, the clear plastic view for the toy. That's what I used here. And then use the window template and fish it in there, and then put the handles and such on. The handles use a really tiny M2 flathead, I think by 4 millimeters. Really tiny stuff. You could probably glue all this on if you want, but you can see I glued this one on because I don't remember why, but you can see what it did. It fogged up. But and then once you get that and you get the cab belt, go ahead and slide this in from the bottom here. You might need to clean up some of these tracks depending on how you print it out, but just make sure it kind of goes in there freely and slides. What you're looking for is that movement here. And then when you really push down on it, it actually kind of locks it in, but I usually leave it like that, or open all the way. So once you get that, go ahead and let's finish this first. So here's our cab base, and then the chair. You're gonna glue the chair pieces in, and then once that's done, we'll go ahead and grab the floor, and then this piece, glue this piece on. Make sure it's flush here. And then once you do that, you gotta put them together. And here, I just used some M2 by 5mm. That's how it should look. Hopefully some of you guys get a little creative, more creative. I used a Sharpie to kind of get all that in there. So then you'll go ahead and slide that into place down here. You're going to kind of push back and then push down. And you'll notice the cutouts here. Hopefully you guys can see that, the cutouts down here. Right in here where the motors stop, you're going to want to push it all the way back up against that. And then what I usually do is maybe grab the hot glue gun, and kind of put a bead over here and over there just to kind of keep this in place. And then once you get that done, we'll go ahead and grab the cab. And you're going to go ahead and fish your light wires through the back of the chair, just like that. Still fish it through. And then what we'll do is you're going to line this up with the cutout in the panel here on both sides. Don't just go jamming. You need to really mess with that cab part to get it to line up there. And then we're going to go ahead and take our M2 by 5 self-tapping screws and hex, or not hex, but socket head. And you're going to go ahead and screw those in. And we'll do the same thing over here. There we go. Now we'll make sure we don't forget this guy. Don't be me. I was wondering why the arm moved earlier. Go ahead and get your flathead. And now, should be good. Oh yeah. Yeah, that arm's nice and solid. Yeah, this is a real solid build. All right. So that's going to be it for this this part. You should at least be this far, and your wiring should at least be taken care of. So you have your, just in case, you have your battery lead. If you haven't done that, make sure you get that soldered up before you start to get everything else buttoned up. I guess if you have a long enough lead, it doesn't matter. And then we know that this is going to go to our bucket, and then this little guy down here. Ooh, I left myself with no room, but this little guy is going to get extended, and then so is this guy over here, this guy. And then these are going to be from our ones. These are our ESC leads. So one's going to go to our bucket, and then one's going to go to our arm cylinders. So we'll explain a little bit more when we go to solder. But again, you should have at least this done. I didn't show you guys how this went on. This gets screwed on with an M2 by 10 millimeter self-tapping screw, and this is the auxiliary power. And unfortunately, I didn't add the auxiliary wire just in case I wanted to add another ESC in there, but I don't plan on doing anything with the bucket at this point. But going to get your external stuff on as well, the cylinders and the covers, and the covers get glued on and then get screwed on. And you can kind of, hopefully you guys can see the orientation of them. And I just made them straight with the cylinder here. I don't know why I didn't do that, but yeah, I just made them straight in line with the cylinder, glued them on, and then screwed them on here with I believe an M2 or M3 by 20. No, M3 by 16 millimeter. And then don't go too tight because you want to be able to move it up and down. And what you want to do is kind of get it inside this part of the arm. If you're going to get detailed with it, there are some other parts to add a shaft and other such to attach to the bucket. But all right, we'll go ahead and get started on the electrical here in the next video. Thanks.